Hi everyone, Joshua here with Barista Warehouse. Today we're roasting coffee on the Kaffelogic Nano 7 Benchtop roaster. This is a great next step through the supply chain where you'll have full control over the coffee beans that you use, the flavors and the blends that you can create, and then the end result being that cup of coffee that you want to drink. And in the long run, the Kaffeelogic will most definitely pay itself off several times over by purchasing green beans and then roasting them yourselves, which is a much more economical way to get your regular coffee fix. And first up, I need you to fix that like button by smashing it, as it does help with the YouTube algorithm and we'd really appreciate it. So without further wait, let's jump straight back into the video. So when it comes to home coffee roasting, the Kaffelogic Nano 7 brings together the necessary performance with easy to use technology that undeniably allows the user, regardless of your experience or knowledge in roasting, the ability to produce consistent outcomes. And the Kaffelogic has loads of tools and online support that offers you the breadth to grow and learn to become a better coffee roaster. Now, full disclosure here, I'm not a coffee roaster and I never have been, but I have been able to unpack the Kaffelogic, roast half a dozen samples straight out of the box, back to back, and within an hour or so, I've had enough coffee ready for a full week of brewing and tasting. So the Kaffelogic Nano 7 weighs only 3.6 kilograms, so you could practically take it anywhere, but you do want to set it up somewhere where it is well ventilated, like under a kitchen extractor fan, as that does prevent smoke from building up in the room. But it really isn't any more than, say, if you were frying something on the pan. Now, out of the box and on the base of the roaster, you can find the display and the control panels. And it comes with a chaff collector, aka the chimney, a scoop for loading the beans into the roaster, a USB stick for software updates and roast profile management, a well-detailed manual, as well as 4 150-gram bags of single origin green beans to get you started. Now, the beans I have are a Colombian, Ethiopian, and a Brazilian, which is a great choice to get started with as I have enough for a few roasts, and the contrast in flavors between these beans allows me to get an immediate feedback in comparison between roasts and single origin characteristics, and you could even blend them together for a best of both worlds. Now, you can roast upwards of 120 grams of beans at a time, which equates to about 5 double espressos with each roast completed. This amount might seem small, but within 2 roasts, you've got almost a 250 gram bag of coffee, which usually lasts me a week or so. And a roast on average takes around 8 to 10 minutes to complete, but I would set 15 minutes for a roast turnaround time of loading, cooling, and then unloading. So the Nano 7 is a variable fan speed fluidized air roaster, meaning once it is turned on, it's going to begin pushing heated air into that narrow chamber surrounding the beans to slowly roast them. And as a result of that upward flow of air through the bed of coffee, the roaster removes a thin layer of skin known as chaff that naturally comes off the bean to be caught up in the chaff chimney. Now, this chaff is easily removed once the roast is finished, and I found the chimney holds around 4 roasts of chaff before needing to be emptied. Now, the Kaffelogic is currently only a 220 volt version, but I am aware there's a 110 in production for our US customers. Using a 60 watt powered motor, it pushes heat upwards of 1400 watts with max temperatures of 240 degrees Celsius. It's controlled from a very sensitive probe within the roasting chamber. And it uses a PID controller with a unique look ahead and gain scheduling system, which aims to maintain very accurate and precise roast profiles. Yet it can still be fully programmable by the user to your preferred temperature and airspeed settings. Now, to begin roasting straight away though, all you need to do is measure out your beans, load them into the roasting chamber, place the chaff collector on, choose your desired roast profile and press play. And it doesn't get much easier than that for a set and forget roaster. Now, this is a very intuitive and simple guide in roasting coffee straight away, and it uses inbuilt software and Kaffeelogic's pre-programmed roast profiles where you can achieve a specific level of roast that's outlined in the manual. And simply put, it's do you like your beans lighter or darker? And this is represented by a number from 0.1 to 5.9. So you can go from a very light New England roast all the way up to the very dark Italian style espresso roast profile. Now a roast profile manages everything for you. And to add a quick note here, a roast profile is a curve that tells the roaster the exact temperature required at a very specific time during the roast. And that arc of the roast profile curve is critical for determining the development of flavor in the beans throughout the roasting period. Now the pre-programmed profiles are not managed by the end time alone, so you may want to stop the roast before it automatically does. And you can at any point throughout, as well as change the profiles mid-roast. But I wouldn't recommend doing this though, as you could get lost here creating a profile that is unrepeatable. Now during roasting, the display on the Kaffeelogic will show you the time duration of the roast, your selected roast level, the current temperature in the roaster, and the profile name that you're using. And you can further scroll through from the standard display to find more live data, such as the current wattage being used, the fan speed in RPMs, and the rate of rise. So how many degrees centigrade is the temperature rising per minute of roasting? And you don't really want to walk away from the roaster here, as you're also able to mark specific waypoints along the roast profile, such as first crack, where the beans get to such an internal temperature and pressure, they burst open with a little pop. Now this is a very key moment in roasting, and it marks the way either side upon improving further roasts. Now the Kaffeelogic can also record the end of first crack, the beginning of second crack, and way down the line to the end of second crack. And quite amazingly, it will even start calculating the roast development time and the roast development percentage after first crack's made. So you can dig into the details and be able to tweak your profiles even more between roasts. And there are further parameters that you can control on the Kaffeelogic, like the amount of beans you place in the roaster, the preheating cycle, the fan speed via RPMs, and the cool down cycle that can all also play a role in determining the final product too. But for a simple plug and play roaster, I really found it super easy to get going. So if you're keen to start roasting your own coffee straight away, you can find the Kaffeelogic in this product link up above. And for the more ardent roaster, you can get visual feedback of the beans by lifting the lid on the chimney and looking down it every so often. And there's also an amazing fragrance that is projected out from this roaster. And it's not too loud that you can't hear first and second crack. A profile though is not completely manageable during a roast, where say you feel it sliding away from your desired outcome and you either want to increase the fan speed or drop the temperature a little bit on the fly. You can't really do that with the Kaffeelogic, and it's a little bit more of a trial by error method. But with the Kaffeelogic Profile Management Studio, which is a free downloadable app that works on Windows and Mac, and providing you use the USB stick placed into the back of the Kaffeelogic roaster, it begins to record all the information during a roast. So you can upload that into the app and have access to directly influencing all the parameters I had mentioned above. And within the app, it's a simple click and drag feature that helps you change your roasting curve. And you can create a profile from new or perform adjustments to a current roast profile that can then be transferred easily back into the roaster. Now this may all seem very technical for the average user, so the perfect addition to the Kaffeelogic is the Roaster's Companion Guide. And this assists you through creating and editing profiles, and I'll drop a link for that in the description down below. Now with this support package, you get the software updates for the Kaffeelogic roaster, and this way you can keep ahead of the constant improvements within the software technology. And I found the support from Kaffeelogic, its software, and the community forums to be fantastic for someone like me who has a very basic knowledge of roasting, and I'm looking to progress my understanding in roasting, especially with the Kaffeelogic, a little further. So once a roast is finished, it goes into its final cooling down stage, which it does so very quickly, and I believe it's at least down to 100 degrees Celsius in 30 seconds, and then much further after that. And it's not long before you can remove the chaff collector, empty out your freshly roasted beans into a container for them to cool down further. I also like to weigh my beans out when I place them in the roaster, and then compare that against the beans' weight coming out too, as this gives me an indication of the roast level and how much of the moisture in the beans was lost during roasting, and it's usually around a 10 to 18% loss. Now you can choose whether to drink freshly roasted coffee or let it rest and drink it over a few days for a different sort of experience. And coffee roasted in the fluidized air method is widely regarded to produce a more evenly roasted and balanced coffee by keeping the beans floating on that bed of air. And this produces smoother transitions of thermal dynamics from the roasting environment to the beans themselves. Now with a little movie magic, I'm going to set up a little cupping in front of us here of coffees that I've roasted earlier on this week. I'm going to give you some indication of the flavor feedback from the roasts I did in my experience, and I apologize in advance for any slurping mishaps. All right, perfect. Now in front of me, I have 4 samples of the Brazilian coffee. I roasted those a few days ago, and they're on a 4.5, 3.5, 2.5 and the 1.5 Kaffeelogic standard profile. And I also have the Ethiopian on a 1.5 similar to the Brazil. So let's just jump in and start cupping. All right, the Colombian at 1.5, there's an acidity straight away that's really unpleasant. It's straw-like and it has no texture to it. It's got a really unpleasant aftertaste too. At 2.5, the acidity is there again, even more so up front on the palate, but there is some tree nutty flavors coming through, and that aftertaste is still there from cup 1. It's lingering a little bit more though. At 3.5, this is by far my favorite of the Brazil so far. There's some creamy texture to it. Straight away, that acidity is already gone and is replaced by a rounded, very mild chocolate flavor, milk chocolate, which does hold through the aftertaste as well. And at 4.5, okay, this is, I would say, a typical dark roast profile. There's no acidity in it at all. It's a chocolate characteristic is still there, but it is masked a little bit by that heaviness of the roast. It's quite dry on the finish too, but very smooth, I reckon, for those who would enjoy a dark roasted coffee. And the Ethiopian at 1.5, this is great, and I did sense this on the break. There was a huge floral fragrance in the grinding, and it was still there in that aroma. And the flavor, it's almost jasmine. It's very sweet, like caster sugar, with a gorgeous velvety texture to the coffee as well, which I really enjoyed. There's also a lingering sweetness, but not much else. Not a lot of body, but well balanced in its acidity and sweetness. So I would look at these results and go, okay, the 3.5 was a good starting point for my Brazil. Maybe I'll try a 3.7 or a 3.8 roast and see what that gets me, but I'd get rid of the rest. If those further roasts go too far, perhaps come back to the 3.5 and look at the end time, or perhaps the rate of rise, and maybe slow that down before first crack a little bit. The Ethiopian, on the other hand, well, I'm really happy with that. It was only my 4th roast, but perhaps I could try and squeeze some body out of it without giving out too much sweetness though. So maybe stretching out that first crack just a little bit again, or perhaps taking that end temp a little bit further along the way. I am confident though that after a few more roasts, I would grasp the basics of what those basic profiles are gonna work for what bean that I have, and be very happy to begin roasting once or twice a week for a consistent supply of delicious freshly roasted coffee. Now as a fluid air bed roaster goes, it involves almost no moving parts. So cleaning or maintenance is almost not required, so long as there's no noticeable negative effects on flavor. You don't need to be cleaning out the roast chamber, but by cleaning the chaff collector regularly and keeping any further chaff or obstructions away from the base of the roaster is good practice to avoid any hazards. And that's the Kaffelogic Nano 7 Benchtop coffee roaster for you. Now, freshly roasted coffee is packed full of flavor, and it is difficult to manage buying and consuming ready to brew roasted coffee at its peak of freshness. So by roasting your own batches of 100 grams, it makes fresh coffee practical every day. And coffees from different origins each have very distinctive tastes. So by buying raw coffee, it gives you the advantage of knowing the origins, and then you can experience them separately as single origin coffees, or blend them together for your tastes and preferences. But if you have any questions on the Kaffeelogic, throw them in the comment section down below, and myself or the team at Kaffeelogic will get straight back to you. If you have any questions on roasting, I'm not your guy, but there's loads of information out there on the Kaffeelogic website as well as YouTube on how to develop a good roast profile. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button on your screen, and then that way you stay notified when we bring out new videos just like this every week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.